when I set this up and I said what's next, we're really trying to figure out what we don't know, what will be next, or would like to know what's going to happen. Of course, an event none of us really anticipated, a few did, and they were the lucky ones, was the financial crisis of 2008. And I'd like to play you a clip from North Shipping 2011.
Wait, we have just started on a down cycle, which is going to be brutal. I'm sorry, I can't give better news.
By the way, we all served drinks at that particular conference with his remarks there. But I want to get your sense about where we are at in the cycle. Kristen, you're in a very unique position because you're a bank. You know, are we still that bleak? Are things getting better? What's your assessment right now? Is this a new normal, or is it just a prolonged downturn?
It's both, but it's a bit depending on where you see it from. If you see it from the US, I would say US in many aspects have come back. They come slowly back, both on a GDP level, industry level, also financial level. American banks manage to capitalize themselves very fast and very well and are overswamped with liquidity. The European banks have taken much more time, much longer time, and they don't still disagree on their politicians on regulatory requirements, so the European banks still are not there yet. Asian banks have kept in their own position. So what we see now is banks are, to a certain extent, coming back. We see a liquidity in the market we haven't seen since before 2007. We see an equity market stronger, specifically for the maritime industry, and we see a bond market, which we haven't seen for many years. So yes, in many ways, a lot is back.
A lot is back, but not a lot is lending. In fact, Sturla, one of the interesting things, your association did a very fascinating survey. And one of the very interesting findings in that survey was that 90% of your members say either they can't get financing or terms are tough. Your assessment?
Yeah, first of all, I think this crisis is different from previous crises. It started off as a financial crisis, turned into a macroeconomic crisis, a fiscal crisis for state budgets, and now it turned into a social crisis. So these are sort of fundamental forces which are different from what we have experienced previously, or for generations, actually. And I concur with what Kristen said here. They are very tough credit terms. At the same time, in Norway, we experience that we are sort of emerging from the crisis in relative terms, even though very many companies are suffering heavily. We are emerging strong, maybe stronger than before. And the reason for that is that our fleet is distributed within the advanced industrialized segments. As we are a very small nation, but one of the maritime majors, the bigger nations than us in terms of fleet market value, they have typically more than 50% of the fleet in the big commodity markets, big bulk, big tankers, big containers. Only 10% of the Norwegian fleet is in this.
What's interesting, though, is if you look at your membership, 45% of the Norwegian Ship Owners Association, 45% of their membership say that their bottom line will improve this year, and a similar proportion say it won't. So that doesn't bode well for confidence in terms of ordering and so forth.
Well, the Norwegian fleet is approximately evenly divided between sort of the traditional segments, where there are still in the very specialized segments, and the offshore segments. Of course, offshore has different drivers than the other segments. But there is an optimism, there is confidence. Norwegian ship owners today have the largest order book in the world. And that is, we interpret that as they are positioning themselves for future growth.
All the hands are going up here. Comments first. We haven't heard from Elizabeth. Then we'll get to Kristen and to Klaus. Yeah.
I would like to add the biggest problem with the institution, the lending institution, the banks, they are very slow in trying to support the business globally and even in certain regions. That drove the issue of potential recovery, which we expected that is coming by year 2016, may slow it down. And that's bringing a lot of problem to the global market, especially in the offshore market, where there are a number of new projects coming on stream. Yeah, if you look at the Australian FLNG, if you look at the renewable energy in Germany or other places such as France and potential the UK. If you look at the African offshore FPSOs and all this requirement, it is critical that the banking sector move with the time and push back its financial gains.
Are you hearing that message, Kristen? All right, good, yeah. Now, Elizabeth, how much longer do you think this downturn is going to last? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years?
So you'll come back and haunt us when
Absolutely.
we meet next time and we were wrong? I think it all depends on which market you are in. And I just want to make one comment on the lending institutions also, because one could hope that the lending institution would also be more counter-cyclical, so that in 2007, when everyone thought that this was going into the skies, there was all this money around. All the banks were there to lend you money, and they were even sort of almost pushing it to you. And then it was full stop. And then now when things look a bit brighter, I think we are scraping the floor, at least in many markets. Now the banks are slowly coming back. So maybe they will then help for us to come into another boom, which we would hope that we would be better after hundreds of years, showing that we are not getting better. We are going like this all the time. And maybe it will happen again, I don't know.
Okay. Kristen, you want to respond, because a lot of these comments are being fired towards the financial sector, and then we'll get Klaus, yeah.
Yeah, I can answer some of them, and I can answer the last one first. I think actually the banks cannot take on the responsibility of the new building. I think that has to lay with the companies. They make the strategic decision of which industries they want to be in, and when they go in, and when they renew their fleet. We have to make certain we pick the right clients, and we follow the right clients. These times, now it's the lowest price, it's the best eco-friendly ships. It's now we should do the lending, and we should follow those who are there for the future. So hopefully, that's how the banks think. Another question here was also the dependency of the banks, and I think that's also one of my, and a very important issue here is how the companies diversify their source of funding, because you cannot only rely on banks, or you can, but that increases your financial risk. And you have the shipping risk, and you should reduce your financial risk. So by using the equity market, using the bond market in the US, in Norway, using banks and several banks, you diversify your risk, and you can tap the market when it's open. Now some markets are open, and they close as fast. So you have to be prepared and have to use the window.
Now, Samik, you made a very good point, which I thought was very interesting. You said what may be good for ship owners is not necessarily good for the industry. And, could you just elaborate on that slightly? And then, Klaus, I want to ask you, do you think this is a good time to invest? Is a smart money investing now, or do you think they will wait because of regulatory uncertainty? Yeah. Matsumitsu first, then Klaus.
Thank you. The one thing I like to make is that profitability of ship operators or owners is not necessarily linked with the growth of the global trade. Rather than that the profitability really relates to the supply and demand on the market of the shipping. So from segment to segment, situations are different. LNG, so automobiles, LPG, buoyant, but Cape-size bulkers, Panamax, so large container-sized ships are not necessarily so good because of imbalance of supply and demand. Therefore, I really warn that ship owners, operators, have to be carefully calculate what is the real situation of each segment.
Klaus. Yeah.
If I say yes, I'll have all the shipyards calling on me this afternoon. Let me just say that our prediction is actually we're going into a prolonged period with single-digit growth. So growth will be lower. We are used to double-digit growth, and it'll be lower. And I think whether it's a smart time to invest when there's a huge overcapacity, that's really a tough question. When it comes to lending by the banks, when it comes to ship owners going in, there's one thing that they must consider, and that is that the large players in the bulkers, the tankers, and the container ships, which is so vital for globalization and for global trade, that's really what means something. they have no alternative than to keep investing in the modern and fuel-efficient and environmentally friendly ships. So there's been a tendency that anybody could buy a ship and anybody could trade and anybody could sail it. But there is just this fact right now that the technology is changing. It's a modernizing fleet, and the big owners, they will have to go in and invest. And that's maybe a word of caution to somebody else. But there's no alternative.
But what you're suggesting is the smart money is investing. You gave your own numbers. Now, you're a huge operation, but in 1 year alone, you've now saved $1.6 billion just in terms of your fuel bill. And over the past 5 years, in terms of your CO2 emissions, you've cut those by 25%, and you want to bring that up to 40% by 2020. That's going to still mean a massive investment.
And that is investment not only in new ships, but it's also a massive investment in retrofitting the older tonnage. So it is not only about scrapping good vessels that has not come of age yet, but it's also about what can you do to modernize and to achieve some of the same benefits on those ships. But investments will have to be made.